Welcome. My name is Juliana Pereira. I actually am here as an advisor. I'm on the board of advisors for Guelph. But I also work at a tech company called Revive, based out of Helsinki in the beauty tech space. But I also used to work in cross-border at Ecommerce that was acquired by Global-e. So I have that is my connection to Guelph, and I've been an attendee for many, many years. So I'm thrilled to be here today. I have a panel of speakers. I have Barbara Garces. She is an old friend. We've actually worked together several times in the past at e-commerce companies. She is the Chief Digital Officer at Citizen Watches, or the Citizen Watch Group. So she is here today with us. And then we have Caitlin Glass, who is also a good friend that she was a client actually in my days at Flow Commerce. So I've known her in a variety of capacities. And so she is the CEO and co-founder of 56, which is a marketing and e-commerce agency that works with early stage brands. So great. So today we're going to be talking about wholesale international, or global wholesale strategies. What I love about this is that I invited Barbara and Caitlin here today because they have very different perspectives on what international wholesale looks like for their respective brands and past brands they've worked at. So we definitely want to make this a dialogue and an exchange of ideas. So I'm actually going to start with you, Barbara. So based on your experience in international wholesale, currently at the Citizen Watch Group. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in wholesale e-commerce and how Citizen Watches looks at this international wholesale? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So, hi everyone. Thanks, Juliana, for inviting me. So, just very briefly, I started my career in e-com in the late 1990s, and I started on the direct-to-consumer side. So there was a very little, wholesale component to it. So I started the website for the merchandising division of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which was a multi-million-dollar business at the time. Really grew that. Very important gifting business. People were looking for special gifts that had a story. So it was a very successful venture. Then stayed there for a while. That's where Juliana and I met, and moved to Godiva Direct, again, mostly a direct-to-consumer business with very little wholesale. Flipped that pretty drastically when I moved over to Ralph Lauren. And at Ralph Lauren, I was really in charge of growing the practice of wholesale digital e-commerce. So at the time, people were scratching their heads. What does that mean? But if you think about Ralph Lauren and the brand, their stores, their owned stores, only really started to develop in the late 1990s. RalphLauren.com in the early 2000s. So very much a wholesale business, very rich wholesale business. And what we found was, as our partners, particularly our department store partners like Saks, like Bloomingdale's, where Mr. Lauren first introduced his collection of ties, they were starting to develop their own e-commerce businesses, but they didn't necessarily, our teams at Ralph Lauren didn't really have the languages to speak. They didn't have that knowledge and they didn't have that expertise. So we built that out as a practice, and what we found in terms of rolling best practices out globally to other markets was that other markets were in different stages of maturity. So we had to really apply, I would say, very specifically to the scenarios, to the different markets, a differentiated approach depending on that group, that country. So it was a very specialized way of working for wholesale digital and wholesale e-commerce at Ralph Lauren. Currently, at Citizen Watch, we have the same approach. So we have a very regionalized business model. So I'm part of the Citizen Watch America group. So we have the US, Canada, Mexico, and the UK. And right now, our priority is really tackling our brand presentation digitally across our group, making sure that we're communicating a unified perspective from a brand. So our biggest brands are Citizen and Bulova. They're well-known brands that have been in the space for a very long time and been very wholesale focused. So it is natural that our focus really has been on, okay, let's dip our toe in the water when it comes to wholesale e-commerce. If you think about how the watch category is distributed, it's one of the last, I would say, product categories to really fully embrace e-commerce. And part of that is because if you think about your own experience trying to buy a fine timepiece, you often go in store. You have to touch, you have to feel. The watch is, it has a certain weight to it. And to many, spending a couple $100s and above is a significant purchase. So people want to really thoughtfully think about that. And a lot of our distribution and our relationships have been built with independent retailers. Those are critically important to us. So again, if you think about your own experiences, you might encounter Citizen or Boulevard at your mom and pop, around the corner on your main street, right? And those relationships, we've built our business over decades with those retailers. So what we've done is, with them in particular, we found a way to work so that we're sharing assets with them. We're taking them along for the ride. A lot of them, I think, are very cautious and very wary about e-commerce in general, but there are ways that those retailers can tap into the digital landscape. They can use social, they can use email communication, they can do digital clienteling. So we've been really working with them to advise them on what we've seen success with. And really, again, just to customize the experience with them so that, again, we can bring them along for the ride. So that's, I think, it from a wholesale perspective,
Yeah.
At least within our universe.
Yeah, I think that's great. And one of the things to note there, the regionalized approach, I like that term, I think is great because it's such a contrast from Caitlin's experience, which we'll get to right now. Caitlin, you have been working in the past, and I met you, at very digitally ambitious or digital first brands has been your experience. So can you talk to us a little bit about, A, how you balance the D2C and wholesale, but also what that international wholesale strategy has looked like for you? Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Juliana and Galf. So as Juliana mentioned, I've always been at brands that are very digital first, or in the case of Moscot, had a very expansive wholesale strategy, but wasn't really capturing the D2C market, but had a lot of ambition to do so. They really made an effort and made lots of investment to focus on their D2C strategy, specifically as it pertained to abroad. Believe it or not, Moscot, which is a massively well-known brand here in New York, is actually even more well-known in Italy and in Europe across the board. As this, we always used to joke that the guys are like celebrities whenever they go there. It was really important for us to capture that traffic that we knew was coming to our website and knew Moscot.com, and were already showing up. And because of that, as much as we worked with our wholesale distributors and our partners abroad, we wanted to make sure that we were capitalizing and giving the best experience for those users in the younger generation who weren't shopping in store for optical, and those who we knew were already there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, so we set up a model, especially working with Flowcommerce, now Global E, to actually capture that traffic from each individual region within our own domain. Not necessarily not including our wholesale partners, but we definitely talked and worked with them through pricing strategies and unique to every market sort of marketing, branding, and all of that good stuff.
So actually, I have a question. So similar to the watch category, I would imagine eyewear and the distribution partners were probably a little bit wary, right? So how did you at Moscot handle that?
Yeah, early on, they were not excited. And I always get this phrase wrong, but it's all boats rise tides or something. It's something my mom used to say. But that's sort of how we sold it to our partners, right? Was our wholesale distribution partners in all of these areas around the world, they were repping multiple brands. No one was ever going to care about Moscot as much as the guys with the last name of Moscot were going to.
Right.
And because of that, it was an easy conversation for us to have of, listen, we've got this traffic, and this traffic is great for us, sure, at Moscot.com, but it's also going to help your in-store accounts because your awareness is up. And we've since, no longer work directly for Moscot, but since the brand has opened stores in Milan and I mean all around the US and Canada, and it just goes to show that this D2C model for them really worked, and it's since allowed them to just grow as a brand tremendously.
I will say that has been our experience too. So anyone who might be wary about that, we got a lot of pushback. So I'm specifically in charge of direct-to-consumer for citizenwatch.com and Bulova.com. And when we were really pushing forward, got a lot of resistance, especially with our independent retailers. So we, of course, work with department stores, regional chains, Amazon.com. But the real particular pain point was specifically with direct-to-consumer. And there was a lot of outrage with our independent retailers, when in fact what we've seen is that all boats. Oh, we're going to get this
I
wrong.
know.
You know,
The
I know
boats and
exactly.
tides.
Thank you, thank you. Wherever that came from. Yes, so I think we all got that sense. So that is definitely what we've seen, and we had to almost prove that point. So we almost had to say, look, just let's hold hands on this. This, our own direct-to-consumer site is not just an e-commerce platform. It is the digital flagship. It is critically important for the longevity of all our brands and our partnerships. So we've definitely seen the benefit of that. I think that has allowed us, a lot of trust, and then I think a lot of credibility when it comes to selling the idea of, well, as a best practice, you might want to try this. As a test, as a pilot program, let's do this. So one of the things that we've done is we've piloted an affiliate on steroids program. And that it's really an extension of our own platform where we then give credit to independent retailers who are participating. And they have been very happy with that. So that's been a success story.
Oh, that's great. Oh, sorry, I was gonna add something there, which is, I like talking about this balance between wholesale and D2C because, it's always a balance. It's always a gentle balance, not a conflict, a balance. But with that, I was talking to someone last night at the dinner, and I don't know if she's here, Angela. Oh, well, I don't think she is. But she said something really interesting when I was telling her about this session, which she said, oh, wholesale, international. You know what? It's awareness for us. It's a huge awareness play. We love it. And then there's also been, the brands that we're talking about here, which is that balance. So I was wondering, what do you think about that in terms of awareness? Did you kind of see it that way? Has that ever been the wholesale piece, driving to DTC, to direct to consumer? What are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
We would always say that your glasses are your most important accessory, right? They're the first thing you put on in the morning. They're the last thing you take off. And because of that, similar to watches, you need to have that in-store experience.
Yeah.
So we used to consider all of our wholesale locations as billboards for us in these specific regions. And for us, it was really important that we didn't destroy any of our existing wholesale partners. That's why I think when we launched the D2C sort of international route, probably not surprising now, but as a 20-something who thought they knew it all, pricing was even more incredible and important to us than I think we had even thought, especially when you consider VAT and your tax strategy and your shipping and all of that.
Yeah.
To get a pair of glasses to someone in London, we didn't want to undercut our wholesale partners who were serving as these great billboards for us there.
Yeah.
So our rate of velocity in which we probably expanded our wholesale channels probably slowed, but our growth didn't actually, because we just had that many more people who knew about the brands and could come into these stores and recognize it and see the storefront.
And then I think it goes the other way as well, right? Because the flagships, the brand websites, then serve as research points. So that data point continues to be the data point where at least 70 to 80% of visitors will research online before making an in-store purchase, that they just feel more comfortable buying in-store, and that's fine. We want to make sure that we're servicing those consumers and allowing them to buy wherever they feel most comfortable, whatever their channel of choice is. And so I think probably, I would guess, Caitlin, what you've done is what we have been undertaking, and I think it's a constant evolution where we're focusing on content and focusing on education and immersion so that each and every consumer, whether they're a watch aficionado or just a plain old person looking for a gift that has longevity, that they have as much information as possible to make an informed purchase in whatever channel they choose. So that's, I think, the main importance of the digital flagship, and that's where I think DTC can help wholesale.
Oh, wow.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So at Moscow, we also had over 1,600 SKUs, right? Any one little wholesaler in Athens, Greece, wasn't carrying all of those SKUs when you break it down by size and color. And they would go into a store, they'd look and open their Instagram or go on the website, and we wanted that point of purchase to be as seamless as if they were going to buy it in store. And it also just helped legitimize us as well.
Yeah.
So it was a
Really good point, actually. It's like leveraging the brands of these other, in some cases it might be mom and pop, but they might actually have a good name in their region, right? That regionalized. And that, I had a question actually about benefits of a regionalized strategy, and it sounds like all of that plays into it. Like those are all kind of what can help drive it, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and I think, I'd be curious, I would maybe imagine the same for eyewear, but for watches, at least what we've seen over time is that each region has very specific tastes.
Yeah.
Right. And even though, we live in a global environment, especially with digital, each region in each country even will, there's one region or market specifically that will just be, where our gold watches encrusted with crystals will be the best seller, whereas in another country, that's like the worst seller possible. So I think that continues to be the mindset where we're trying to, for example, rationalize SKUs, make there be consistency from a brand and a marketing perspective. Digital assets and photography are seamless and all the same everywhere where you might touch the brands, but at the same time, the assortment then needs to some degree stay specific to each region or market.
Yeah, for sure, like that localization piece, We saw that a lot at Flow. I mean, I'm working with you. That was the whole thing about building different experiences, right? So for Caitlin here, so this is funny. I didn't know this. I don't know if the rest of you do, but Moscot was actually founded in 1915. I had to look this up, and we talked about this on the call. So it is actually a traditional brand. We were talking over 100 years and everything. So how were you, if you could we could double click a little bit more on how you were able to get the cross-border approach for both, wholesale and DTC and all of that. Like, why did that work?
Yeah, I kind of came in, probably not shocking to many, with guns blazing, thinking I could fix the entire world. And the reality was I kind of just broke it down of, listen, your wholesale partners and distributors have had over 100 years to sell this brand and grow this brand. And it hasn't grown as fast as you'd like it to. And what are we going to do? Are we going to set up Google ads running in London pointing to these wholesale mom and pops for a customer to walk into a store and convert on a different brand? No, you want to set up the Google ads, point them to your website, and have them come in and shop and order in pounds and get it next day shipping and get it produced there. And then the tricky part for optical was a lot of the HIPAA regulations here in the US and the way people view optical and that service around the world. It isn't always a medical device, and the importing and exporting. And that's why we really used partners to help utilize a lot of those things, because it was just a cluster at times. But
No, that's really interesting. So for Barbara, what do you think the future holds in terms of, like, what's your vision for the D2C side? And given the strength of your wholesale partnerships at Citizen, like, how are you thinking about that in the future and how that evolves?
So I think in the future, we'll continue to hold hands, right? Where we are enabling our wholesale partners to develop their digital presence and e-commerce businesses as much as they would like to in the way that's right for them, while also expanding our businesses. Because again, our direct-to-consumer business, our direct-to-consumer e-com website is critically important. There will always be consumers who prefer buying directly from the brand. There will always be consumers who prefer buying in a department store or the shop, the independent retailer that they've gone into for years or for decades. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to do that. But I think what we've really been prioritizing over the past few years is expanding and leveraging a common platform across all of our different countries. So again, under Citizen Watch America, we have the US, we have Canada, we have Mexico now on the same platform. We're going to the UK. And all of the technologies that support that business from the back end side need to be consolidated as well. I see it as a kind of an ongoing rollout. And because, right, other regions and markets are in different states of maturity or readiness for e-com, I think we'll take along with us whatever country market is ready. We'll continue to persuade and share the benefits and the successes and really just continue to convince them, because this is really the way of the world, where ultimately we're on a single platform. That's my hope and my vision. On a single platform with a single strategy, a single unified tech stack.
Right. And you use the word symbiotic relationship. I mean, ultimately, that's what you'd want to see, is everything come together in one place, right, and centralized. So, Caitlin, we've talked a lot about the benefits of cross-border and sort of that side. I'd love to hear what you see the challenges are, or maybe we can sort of turn it more positively to what are the opportunities, do you think, of improvement sort of for the cross-border piece,
Yeah.
How can it be better,
It's such a good question, and I feel like whatever I say today is going to be old and archaic 3 months from now. I feel like this industry specifically is so fast-paced, and that's why I love this sort of environment when we all sort of like brain dump everything. Specifically for brands, I think they have this idea of it being a lot harder than it is. And listen, I'm definitely not a rocket scientist, and if I could figure it out at Moscot, then like it can be done for brands. And I think a lot of brands, even the partners and our clients at 56, a lot of times we approach the aspect of international, they're like, no, we're not ready for that yet. We're still this small business. And they don't realize necessarily how easy it can be. I think there's that side of things.
Yeah.
The other piece of that, I think, is the consumer, and myself included, is just more demanding every day. And you expect to get something no matter where you are in the world. You don't care if the brand's based in London or based in New York or based in Hong Kong. You want it at your door tomorrow for free. And if it's not, then why?
Why not?
And I think a lot of that, overcoming those challenges, are growing increasingly more important as shipping gets more expensive and whatever it may be. But it's just navigating through all of that space.
So I hate bringing in the pandemic, but you kind of can't avoid that. Also, given the acceleration in e-commerce that we've seen as a result. So I would love to know, Barbara, for you, how has that impacted the DTC as well? Obviously, wholesale, because we're discussing that in more detail here. But how did that actually impact wholesale, given that a lot of these mom and pop shops might not have e-commerce? So people aren't coming into stores. Like, what happened there?
Yes. So our direct-to-consumer e-com business, like I think the industry research has shown and all of the news, rapidly accelerated and got us to a place where we would have been maybe 2 or 3 years down the line. What was really interesting, and we've heard little snippets of this in the news, is that the independent retail channel also really did well during the pandemic. And I think it's because, and at least this is maybe perhaps from a New York perspective, but I know my neighborhood, my peers, we were all rallying for our small shops, right? In our neighborhoods, shop local. We wanted to go to our local coffee shop because we wanted them there in the next year or 2 or 3, right? And all along, I live in Brooklyn, all of those shops were heavily frequented, and that is feedback that we got from our independent channel, that they saw a huge amount of success all of the things that we continue to do from a direct-to-consumer perspective, all of the marketing, paid advertising, all of that really did help them during the pandemic.
Right.
The I think most challenged channel was perhaps department stores that had the supply chain issues and inventory issues, all of the shutdowns. So it was very much a kind of success in two specific areas and wildly successful.
Right. That's so interesting. I wonder for folks here, did you see that? Did you start kind of investing more in your local shops when they started opening up? Like did what Barbara just said kind of resonate there? Because that's actually a really good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but that was something in my neighborhood. So I don't know if anyone else saw that. I see some people nodding. So I'm glad you're supporting the local shops. Well, that's great. So, we have 2 minutes. I would love to see if anyone has a question in the audience. Wholesale, have you tried it? Is it working for you? Like, are you taking the cross-border approach or more regionalized?
You don't all have to speak at once.
Hi, I'm sort of wondering not so much from a fulfillment perspective, but more from a marketing perspective, whether you guys, what sort of hand-in-hand activities or activations do you do with your wholesale partners, if any?
Great question, yeah.
Do you want to start, or would you like me to? We do a ton.
Yeah.
A ton.
I could talk about this all day.
Yes, yes, it could be hours. So I think we've mostly done digital, of course, and their co-op programs. They involve multiple digital touch points, so ad campaigns, social activations, influencers. So we try to take a 360 approach, and there is a lot of collaboration with our wholesale partners, their agencies, our agency, and our teams to formalize a plan that everyone feels really comfortable with. I think the most critical thing is that we've gotten to a place where we are sharing data and all of the successes, all the KPIs. That was, I think, a challenge just in wholesale in general. I wouldn't say it was necessarily a resistance. Perhaps with some partners there was resistance, but it was a bandwidth issue, resource issue. But it's critically important to be able to look at those KPIs, set them ahead of time, and then make sure you're measuring the right thing so that you know what to do better for the future, and then everyone feels better about that.
Right. Oh, I'd love to hear just quickly from you, Caitlin, on that as like a not just sales channel, but a marketing channel.
Yeah, no, specifically at Moscot, they do a ton. I think I saw online that I know, they just took over like a full trolley in Milan, and it's fully branded Moscot, and it's like all that yellow going around town, and it's pointing them to retail in store. Moscot, for a while, we would actually work with our wholesale partners and get co-op dollars from them, just like a department store would. And we would run dark posting campaigns pointing to in-store traffic, and we'd easily be able to see who came into store based on using a specific code we would set up, if it was really driving traffic to such and such optical shop in Long Island or wherever it was. And then specifically at Moscot too, we set up like fully specific marketing channels and marketing strategies for each country that we were in. So it was a little bit of a beast, I would say. But once again, that's why we had Flow to help.
Right. Oh, nice plug. Well, that's all the time. That's all the time we have. But thank you so much. Please feel free to come and ask any of us questions. Definitely Barbara and Caitlin have just a wealth of knowledge in this area. I hope you enjoyed the session. So thank you very much for being here.